So we're back again. We have Sam for another episode of AsianDHD. And this time we're going to delve into our personal stories and especially my backstory into getting diagnosed. So Sam, welcome back. Good sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me back again.
Yeah, no problem.
For me, yeah, to be fair, we've known each other, 20 years? Hang on, 20 years. We've been, I would say, we've been quite close friends. We've been on holiday. We've been through ups and downs. You've kind of witnessed me at my lowest points, and I've witnessed you at your lowest points. And I never thought you'd had ADHD. That never even crossed my mind. So I'm hoping this session today, we can kind of really dig deep into kind of like your story. Because I think there's something that I need to learn, as in, how is it that it's gone to where it's got to? And I never really understood it as a mental health issue. I just thought it was life, right? And I'm sure that others can take a lot from this session as well by hearing your story as well. So I thought just kind of have a quick chat about you, if that's all right.
Yeah. I'll try my best to give you my recollection of things, of how it went. So fire away.
Cool. All right. So the first question I'm going to ask you, right? So when did you first begin to suspect that ADHD might actually be a factor in your life? And what led you to actually pursue a diagnosis after all of these years?
Okay, so for me, I've always kind of had an inclination that there's something not quite right with the brain, because I used to have bouts of anxiety and then like depression, and I'd feel better, but then it would happen again, and then I'd feel like I just needed to just isolate from people, from the world, and stuff like that. But it's only, I think, only the last few years when I like started looking into psychology, trauma, just to understand what was happening to me, is when I came across, the term ADHD. I've heard of it before, but because I never thought I'd have ADHD, like I'd be neurodivergent. And the thing is, you've known me for 20 years, other people have known me for longer, and they wouldn't have guessed it either. But that's probably because none of us knew what ADHD was, right? None of us knew what the symptoms were, what it even entails. We just thought it's just another term, right? So then I started reading, So obviously, we're in the UK, we have the NHS website, but there's other resources like WebMD, Healthline, and those websites. And I started reading the symptoms, right, as we discussed in the previous episode. And it was just dawning on me, like, hang on, this looks very, very familiar. It didn't confirm that I had ADHD or anything, but it just, reading it, I kind of related to the symptoms, right? So with ADHD, what it is, because we've been through like school, college, and then university, because those were structured environments, it was difficult to kind of know if I had ADHD or not, or even suspect, right? But once you go out into the real world, where you have to then, take care of yourself, more or less, right? You have to be independent. You have to figure out how to do stuff by yourself. That's when I started to struggle. Just day-to-day functioning, getting stuff done, procrastination, things like that. So, and then, I started reading the symptoms such as inattention, and I mean, I don't have hyperactivity, but impulsivity. I knew I was impulsive, but I never knew like to the point where it's because of ADHD. And then, like purchases, I used to make just silly purchases on Amazon, right? Just buying unnecessary things, right? But forgetfulness and stuff like that, that's okay. Difficulty organizing things, like just organizing a routine, like having a schedule, things like that. So it was always in the back of my mind, right? But then obviously when I got diagnosed, it confirmed that what I kind of suspected. But, it was still a shock.
But for example, when you said like you came out in the real world now you can kind of see that maybe some of your decision making might not have been the same. How did you define normal at that time to know that how you felt might be slightly abnormal or different?
Do you mean like decision making?
Yeah, so how did you know that something wasn't right? Like how did you define what was right at that time?
What was right? How do you mean?
So you mentioned about the point that so after school, because school was structured, you came out and there was a lot of like you had to kind of do things by yourself and decision making. Now, how did you know what the right decision was that you weren't making?
I mean, with ADHD, one of the symptoms is making decisions, right, becomes difficult. I would dwell on making big decisions, right, for so long that I'd end up procrastinating. And then I'd look at like you or other people and I think, how, why is it so easy for them to do certain things? And why is it so difficult for me? Why do I have this barrier? What is causing this issue? Right? Because that's the thing, is it leads you through a path of self introspection and like self awareness, right? Because without self awareness, I wouldn't have probably even bothered or known that I should get diagnosed or even go for the test. So it's just like little things. It's difficult to explain, but for example, you're doing well in your career, right? You're progressing through your career, through your life, right? Whereas I was struggling. I was struggling to, find employment, or if I got a job, it was like really mundane and boring, and I end up quitting. I felt like my decision making was very poor in terms of the choices I made up to now.
No, thanks for the honesty, man. Because I think the decision of kind of seeking help is such a big decision, and I just think that actually goes really well to my next step. Is like what actually made you go make that decision? Because you're saying how about the procrastination. Is this a decision that you made that took a while for you to make, or how did you come to terms to actually go and actually seek support?
So basically, I mean, I was going through phases of, as you know, depression, anxiety. I'd noticed that sometimes these phases would be severe, sometimes it would be not so severe. And when it wasn't, when I feel like my mood was improving, I was okay, I felt fine. But when I didn't, that's when I thought, I need help. Like I can't keep going on like this, because I need to sort out whatever is happening with me. It's only when I went to the therapist that I'm currently seeing, because he specializes in ADHD. And after 6 months worth of sessions, he basically said, look, you have ADHD, or I suspect you have ADHD. And then I asked him, what made you so sure that I have ADHD? He goes, the symptoms and signs that I've been observing, and from what you've been telling me, it's a classic case of ADHD. And the thing is, when he said that, on the way home, he obviously recommended me that book, Scattered Minds by Dr. Gabor Mate, right? I bought that on I think it was Audible. I mean, obviously I had a free trial or something. You get the trial version. I got the audio book and I started listening to it. And like I listened to it for throughout the entire day and then the next day. And I finished the book. And obviously Gabor Mate, he has ADHD too. So I was like reading an autobiography, and then the following day I booked my assessment, and my assessment was the following week. And, I was just anticipating. So the assessment consisted the ASRS screening test. It's a questionnaire. And then it tells you if you've got suspected ADHD. And then for a formal diagnosis, you have to speak to a clinician. So obviously I went down the private route, because the NHS waiting list is, they said minimum 12 months up to 18 months. And I just couldn't wait that long. It was just too long for me. So then before the call with the clinician, I had to do a thing called a QB test. It's like an on-screen test that measures your reactions and your fidgetiness and all of that stuff. And then when I had the call with the clinician, they went through the whole thing and asked me about my life history and all of that stuff. And then a formal diagnosis was given.
So what was that feeling? Because you were saying how like you done your research, you read the autobiography. Like, what did it feel like when it was like, this is what it is?
Bro, it was a sense of relief, because my entire life, it's been like up and down, constant up and down. Like I feel like at one point I was getting better, and then the next it crash and burn. And that relief of knowing finally, after that many years of searching, that all of this is because of a condition called ADHD, which is treatable with medication or even non-medication, and basically therapy, right? It's just identifying your behaviors, identifying your symptoms, and managing them now throughout life. Obviously, it's still challenging, but at least now I know what the problem is. But the relief at the end was like amazing. And the thing is, I finally now have like a plan of action. All this time I never had that plan of action. And the thing is, now I can see maybe the ADHD is even probably in my family, because now a lot of the behaviors of certain family members just make sense.
That That actually takes me quite well to the next question. I'm sure the decisions that you made in the past, the way you felt in the past, wasn't unnoticed by your family. So how did they feel when you went and you actually said to them, well, look, this is what it is?
So one of the first people I actually told was my uncle, because my uncle's a GP in the NHS, and anything medical related, I just asked for his advice. And when I told him, he was so overwhelmed with joy, and I don't know why. I think it's probably because he saw me going through all the hardship and whatnot. But he said, "I'm happy that you've told me. It makes sense. It finally makes sense. And now you know what you can do. If you need help or anything, just ask me." And basically, he gave me a long list of things to do, like order medication and stuff like that. And then I told my parents, because obviously my parents have had to deal with this a lot. When you have ADHD, one of the things is struggling to cope with your emotions, emotional dysregulation, like anger and just doing things on impulse, and that causes a lot of problems. It's a reason why people that have ADHD have problems with relationships, with family, friends, whatever it is, because people don't understand what it is. And the person that probably has ADHD has gone undiagnosed, right? It causes a lot of conflict. And I've had many situations where I've been at loggerheads with people in my family. It's because they didn't understand me and I didn't understand kind of them. And the thing is, maybe one day or another day we'll talk about oppositional defiance and what that means. Struggling with authority figures, stuff like that. But I haven't read into that as much, so I'll have to do the research. But it's just that tension and friction with certain family members, extended family members. It's become better now, and obviously my parents didn't even understand what ADHD was, so I had to give them a video or find a video on YouTube that was, in their native language, which explained what it was. And then it kind of made sense. But the thing is, this is why it's important, especially because we come from an Asian background. A lot of people don't even know what ADHD is. And a lot of people don't even believe it. And that's the sad thing, is because then those people or those kids, look, I've got a cousin who's around 5 years old, and he goes to school and he's been suspected of having ADHD, and the kid gets bullied, right? He's a 5-year-old kid. What has he done to? He's just different to other kids. He's hyperactive, but does that mean he should get bullied just because he's different, right? It's really sad. So that's the thing. And when people don't understand someone or something, their automatic reaction is to isolate them because they're different, right? So, and now I've forgotten what I was saying.
So once you've had your diagnosis, how do you feel maybe your friends and your family perceive you now in comparison to before?
Well, now it makes sense to them why I struggled with certain things, and why I had anger issues or sleep problems. I've had sleep problems since I think the last, 10 years, or maybe even longer, which is another symptom of ADHD, or just not being able to sleep, and also being addicted to stimulants like caffeine and nicotine. Now they know that disorder that can be treated. And the thing is, more and more people are getting diagnosed because people of our generation, right, have probably gone undiagnosed as children. And now a lot more people are getting diagnosed. And that's why you're seeing an explosion in ADHD diagnosis. We've probably spoken to, or we know at least one other person that's within our immediate circle that's suspected of having ADHD, right? So that's what it is. Now people are more understanding as opposed to just, making silly judgments.
No, I think it makes sense because I look back and I think my perception of you hasn't changed at all. There was a period of time where I felt a little bit of guilt, where I used to kind of, when we used to talk, and I didn't really want to talk about my career and stuff like that because I knew you weren't having the best time in that. But my perception was never that it was ADHD. I really never knew what it was. And to be fair, I never really wanted to be that guy that tries to diagnose things because I'm not a psychologist. That's not my role. So for me to sit there and kind of self-diagnose that, no one benefits from that, especially if it's the wrong diagnosis. But my perception of you hasn't changed. I think the one thing that has impacted me quite positively now is I think a lot more about the way people behave, especially when they align so well with some of the points that you raised on the previous podcast and what you told me before as well. But yeah, nice. Deep stuff, man. Deep stuff. I don't know how your family and themselves have managed with something like that. But you guys are a close knit family from what I've seen. So Good for you, man.
I appreciate that, man. It's been difficult, but now, look, everyone has ups and downs in life, right? Some people have different challenges. This is what my challenge is, And the thing is, now, especially like in our communities, stuff like this never gets talked about. It's always swept under the rug, because of that shame or whatever stigma or just ignorance. People don't know what ADHD is, and the fact that there's many other mental health disorders. It's not just depression and anxiety. Some people have bipolar disorder, some have split personalities. A common one is OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. And you know how much it negatively impacts people because that constant worry of maybe having to wash their hands after they've done something or they've touched something. It drives them to the point of feeling depressed and anxious and stuff like that because it's become so ingrained and it becomes difficult to manage. So there's many different types of disorders, and that's what it is. We got to talk about it so it helps people understand that, look, it's normal, it happens, and it will happen to people. And the thing is, we've seen many people, friends of ours, that now they've had children and some of the children have autism. So they're on the neurodivergent spectrum. And I've got another cousin that's autistic. So the thing is, things like this, it's only going to become more of the norm. And people can't hide behind, whatever it is, the shame or stigma, because it's, at the end of the day, these children, it's not their fault they have a thing. They're actually special because they're different. And if you help them and if they get the right treatment, then they can flourish, right? They can thrive. Maybe not so obviously with severe autism, but there are some autistic people that are geniuses in different fields, right? Polymaths and the brilliant analytical skills. People with ADHD have unlimited creativity. For example, I think Richard Branson has ADHD. Bill Gates has ADHD, and many other famous entrepreneurs and artists and musicians. And I'm telling you, it's because of ADHD they had those moments where they went on to do like brilliant stuff,
Not saying that I managed a guy that was dyslexic, right? And nobody wanted to work with the guy. And I felt really bad. Once he came up to me and asked me to read an email to him, and I didn't know he was dyslexic. So I turned around and I go, "What? Am I your dad? I'm not going to be giving you a bedtime story." And I never knew why he went so quiet. Then I found out he's dyslexic. And it just shows how trigger happy you can be when you're kind of neurotypical and you think the whole world is. But this guy, right? I gave him half an hour of my time every morning just for him to kind of offload in his mind, just to understand what was being asked of him. The moment I did it, no joke, he created one of the best products that at that time was a company called Health Education England we worked for. One of the best products that we had. He created it, he designed it, he launched it, from the whole process of kind of data extraction through to kind of insight. He did all of it by himself. And this was potential that nobody really wanted to know, nobody could see, but he had it. So now you've got this level of awareness, right? On a positive note, what level of potential do you think that you've got that the world hasn't seen yet?
I've always felt like I haven't reached my true potential. And people have said that. And it used to make me feel like absolute shit. And it used to make me feel guilt. It used to make me feel shame. And it made me feel like, I'd never amount to anything. And always had that pressure to be something, be someone. But the thing is, I realized is most of that time I was trying to please other people and not live up to my own goals and ambitions. It was just, very superficial, surface level stuff that at the end of the day, doesn't matter. Like, yeah, some people are motivated by money and fame, but for me, it's always been about helping people and helping people to become better and reach their fullest potential. I've always enjoyed psychology. Like, I studied computer science and mathematics, right? So I was always good at problem solving, analyzing, stuff like that. But that kind of work really bored me. I realized that I love being creative. That's why I make videos on whatever. It could be like just a silly video, funny video. But I like learning new things. And that's the thing when you have ADHD is you tend to get bored very quickly and you're constantly seeking novel experiences. When you do the same thing, it becomes boring. But that's why, because I volunteer for a charity organization, for their marketing, I get to do creative stuff. And that gives me that sense of purpose and joy, because I'm also helping people, helping people find jobs, helping people find a career that they enjoy, and then all of the other stuff that comes with it. And so that's why one of the reasons why I started this podcast is because I like doing different things, experimenting. And I guess that side of me started during the pandemic, because during the pandemic, we were all locked up, right? We were just at home. Right? And at that time, I had a really, really crappy PC, and I used to basically record gameplay of my I guess a lot of people at the time were playing video games. So I used to record a lot of that content and then just edit it and put it up on YouTube or whatever, just to learn video editing. And then from there, I did a few courses online. I learned video editing, and now, I'm not an expert by any means. I'm nowhere close, but I can make a video, I can edit it, I understand the process, things like that. So it's always been about, for me, learning new things. Like recently, I started learning Arabic. I'm enjoying that. So I don't know what my potential is, but I know that when I put my mind into something and I enjoy it, and when that hyper focus kicks in, then I can basically achieve anything. Because look, how long have we been talking about doing a podcast, right? And I said, yeah, I'll do it. But at the time, I didn't know how to do one, right? But now, through obviously research and talking to other people, I've figured out the platform, figured out how to record one, how to edit the audio. And the thing is, all of that came because of the pandemic, and when that kind of piqued my interest in all of these different creative outlets. And I just do it because I enjoy it. It gives me that just as a hobby, So that's what it is. So I don't know what my potential is, but
because my last question, right, which is a bit of a dumb question. I was going to ask you, what do you see yourself in 5 years' time? But I'm not going to go into that. What I want to know is, based on everything you said to me today, how are you going to ensure you're going to keep this commitment to this podcast? What steps are you going to take?
Well, I have you, for one, as an accountability partner. Because the thing is, there's other people that want to be on the podcast. So it's not just for me, because it has to be, I can't think of myself. I have to think about maybe the impact the podcast might have. Maybe it might help someone similar to our background, similar life progression, similar lifestyle, and maybe they might have ADHD. Or maybe it's a parent who's worried about their child and they happen to listen to this podcast and they think, oh, hang on, this sounds like my child. Let me see if I should go and speak to a mental or professional, or basically a psychiatrist, or just go to my GP even. Basically start that first convo with a professional. Because if you don't, then you're going to just end up spending so many years of your life without knowing what the issue is, until one day it becomes so frustrating that you're then forced to find a solution when the solution has already been there. It's just you didn't see it.
Well, mate, you got my commitment. I'm really invested in this. I can see where it can actually potentially go.
Yeah.
Then what I've heard from you so far, even today, I've learned quite a lot. And I think it's weird the fact that I didn't notice it. A part of me feels quite bad that I didn't notice it for so long. But I'm happy to be on the journey with you. And on that note, I want to say a massive thank you for kind of hearing it. And let's do what we can to kind of get this up and running.
I know we've talked about many ideas, and I'm actually excited, especially because you work in the health service, right? You're in a position to, I guess, introduce some changes, and we'll cover these in a future episodes where we'll discuss some upcoming ideas that we might be able to implement, and it'll be good. So thanks for being on this week's episode. I shall see you next time. Take care. See you soon.